This module is about your resume, which in reality is your personal advertisement. Let's think about a resume differently. The resume is really a sales document. Think of it like an advertisement. You are actually out there when you're trying to get a job, selling something. You're actually trying to sell yourself. The boss is actually a shopper, and he's shopping for an employee. He's really shopping for you. Let's take a look at resumes and how people look at resumes and how resumes are handled once they get in a company. First of all, nobody reads a resume. Resumes at best are skimmed. Honestly, no time is spent looking at resumes. It's estimated that the average resume gets looked at for between 5 to 10 seconds before it's rejected. If you're lucky, instead of being rejected, something will catch the reviewer's eyes and they'll spend a little bit more time and they'll invite you in for an interview. You must catch the screener's attention. Think of your resume like an advertisement. It's just like a magazine ad, and I very strongly encourage you to do this. Get a magazine and flip through it like you normally would. Just flip pages. Which ads stop you? What ads have stopping power? What captures your attention in the ad? Let's take a look at the classic anatomy of an advertisement, because you really must think about your resume as being an advertisement selling you. Well, first of all, advertisements have headlines, and the headline should have stopping power. It should get someone to say, whoa, what is that? Let me pay some attention to this. It should be intriguing. It has to make you want to read the rest of the ad. It also needs to be clean. It can't be overly cluttered. It has to be very easy to find the main points. And above all else, your resume, which is your personal advertisement, has to answer the question, what's in it for me? And this was discussed in detail in our earlier module because, let's face it, the employer is selfish. And everything he looks at, he's looking at to say, what's in it for me? Your resume has to be an advertisement which answers the question, what's in it for me? Let's take a look at some ads. What is this headline saying? Clean multiple surfaces with ease. And they actually are highlighting the word ease with another color. Very simple, very, very clean. It communicates two clear benefits. That it'll clean multiple surfaces, and it's basically really easy to use and effective. Your resume should be just like this ad. Clean, clear, communicates easily. Let's take a look at this Geico ad. I love this ad because it clearly answers the question, what's in it for me? And the headline is, you can depend on Geico. And then there's a bunch of bullet points under it. So the headline here makes a bold claim. You can depend on Geico. And then below it are what I call supported with proof. Those are proof statements. So what you have here is they're saying you can depend on Geico because we've been in business since 1936, because we're the third largest private passenger auto insurance company in the nation, because we're a subsidiary of Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway. So in reality, what you have here is an advertisement with a bold claim and proof statements. And there's clear, obvious benefits followed by proof points. This is exactly what you have to do in your resume. So what must your ad have? Well, first of all, your resume has to have stopping power. There are likely going to be hundreds and hundreds of resumes that are going to come in for any job that's advertised. Why should somebody look at your resume and say, hey, we're going to bring in 5 or 6 people, 1 out of 100? Why should they stop, read your resume, and why should your resume get them to bring you in? Your resume has to have stopping power. If they don't read your resume, you'll never get pulled in. It has to have clearly communicated benefits. You must communicate the benefits of the boss hiring you quickly, simply, and clearly. If it's confusing, it goes into the rubbish bin. It has to be clean. Over and over again, people try to jam way too much in the resume, thinking that quantity is better than quality. They use tinier and tinier point sizes. They shrink the margins. They squeeze as much as they can in. The next thing you know, the resume goes to 2 pages. That's a disaster. The less you say, the more powerful it is what you leave on the resume. It has to be easy to navigate. It has to flow. This is one of the big things that I have criticizing resumes. There's no logic to them. You can't follow them top to bottom. They don't tell a story. I've had to look at resumes and read them a dozen times before I start to get a feel for who the person is. You should be able to skim a resume and get a feel for who the person is. And if you follow our directions in the latter part of these slides, you'll absolutely understand what I'm talking about. You have to make the boss want more, so they invite you in for an interview. This is critical. You have to make it attractive enough to make yourself attractive enough where he says, hey, bring this guy in. Let me take a look at this person, this man or woman. And above all, you have to answer the question, what's in it for me? When you look at your resume, look at every single line on it. Every statement, every sentence, every bullet point. Are you answering the question, what's in it for me? Meaning from the boss's perspective. Well, what do people notice on a resume? Because I've looked at thousands of resumes and I've done a lot of research on this. And when a resume comes across someone's desk, there's a lot on it. Someone's going to review that resume in 5 to 10 seconds. Some things have to make their eyes what I call trip. What makes someone's eyes trip? What makes your eyes stop? And one thing that doesn't make your eyes stop is a paragraph. Bold headings make people's eyes stop. That's why advertisements have a big bold heading at the top. Numbers are very important. Numbers make your eyes stop. It's almost impossible for people to read something that has numbers in it without them stopping when they see the numbers. So if you work someplace for 3 years, write the numeral 3 or the numeral 6. Don't put in the words 3, T-H-R-E-E or S-I-X. That's a mistake. Always use numerals anytime you can. Percentage signs and pound signs are also brilliant. Anytime somebody sees a percentage sign, their eyes go right to it right away. And then what they do is their eyes back up 3 or 4 words to the left, 3 or 4 words to the right, and they read the words around the pound sign or around the percentage sign. This is why it's very important that whatever sentences or statements you put on your resume are very short. So if somebody reads 2 or 3 words to the left, 2 or 3 words to the right, they get your whole statement. Underlines can also be very important, but let me caution you. Don't have your resume start looking crazy with 20 different fonts, all different colors, bolds and underlines. That's not what we're suggesting. But underlines can be used very, very cleverly and very effectively in a unique way to highlight your headlines and the major bold statements you're saying about yourself. And we'll show you that in an example resume a little bit later. This is one of the most important things you should have on your resume. Bullet points. Short bullet points. 2 to 3 word bullet points. Sentences are bad. Bullet points are good. Simple as that. Remember, resumes are skimmed. They're not read. You have to make little tiny short pithy statements that if someone skims your resume, they'll capture a couple of these important statements that you're making and invite you in for a job interview. Let's take a look at what I consider the classic resume design. And this might be almost too small for you to see, but I think it's kind of irrelevant. I think all you have to do is, from the distance you're seeing it, is probably perfect. Because look what's at the top of this resume. The word resume. It's one of the most noticeable things on the entire resume. It's probably the first thing that everybody sees. Come on. The boss knows it's a resume. Why are you writing resume? And I have seen this. Not many people do this anymore, but this is crazy to waste this opportunity. That's where you could put something major about yourself that's a huge benefit. Don't waste real estate on your resume by using the word resume. Let's take a look at what else is on here. There really isn't a headline. It's missing a headline. There's nothing really that tells me anything about John Doe. And who is John Doe? Nobody knows who he is anyway. This is classic. People put their name in these gigantic, bold letters. The boss doesn't know who you are. Your name is not going to impress him, and your name doesn't tell him anything about you. Don't get egotistical here. Your name doesn't have to be large. It actually doesn't help you to have them see your name. Career objectives? We talked 50 times now about the whole concept of what's in it for me. Every line on this resume should be focused on what your boss cares about. Do you really think that your future boss cares about what your career objectives are? I don't think so. That is a huge waste of real estate because it's one of the first things on the entire resume. And unless those career objectives are exactly what this job is, it's going to probably hurt you. So in my opinion, career objectives can never help you. They can only hurt you. Let's take a look at what we're really seeing on this resume, because the details of it are somewhat less important. But what are your eyes drawn to? What do you see in this? Well, basically, you see the word summary. You see the word experience. You see a bunch of names of random companies. You see the word, education down at the bottom. What do those statements tell about you? Absolutely nothing. None of these answer the question, what's in it for me? They don't tell the boss anything about you, nor do they give any benefits whatsoever to the boss. And so after 5 or 10 seconds of skimming this resume, the boss basically knows absolutely nothing about you, and I would argue that this resume is going to be a quick delete into the trash can. So let's look at an improved design. What we have here is a resume that essentially has exactly the same content as the previous resume. It's just formatted differently, and it makes some bold and important statements about you, and it tells a story. Right at the top, summary, highly experienced sales professional, grew sales and profits. That's a great statement. Anybody who gets this resume is going to read that. They're going to see it. That is your headline. Then you have a bunch of subheadlines. Personal traits, detail-oriented people person, accomplishments, expanded business while training and managing staff, experience, 5+ years experience in selling insurance and developing clients. And at the bottom, rather than putting the word education, which tells the boss nothing about you at all, instead put something like extensive formal training. That is a benefit. Bosses want people who have extensive formal training. And let's take a look at what's under there. Bachelor's of Arts, major in history, University of Utah. Don't start with the name of the university. Nobody cares what university you went to. If you didn't go to Yale or Harvard or Princeton, nobody cares. University of anything, any state, is probably not going to impress people very much, because I don't mean to criticize anybody, but don't most state universities have 80,000 students? Why are you special? Put down what matters. You have a Bachelor's of Arts. That's an accomplishment. That's what you succeeded in achieving from that university. And put down any formal training you had. And the definition of formal training is fairly loose. So for example, on here we have active property and casualty insurance license with the Department of Insurance. That's pretty good. You obviously did a lot of training to accomplish that. Microsoft Office and PowerPoint certification training class. This might have been that you spent an afternoon in a office in your company with 5 other people, and in 2 or 3 hours they just gave you some tips on how to use Microsoft Office. Put it down. It's training. completed formal insurance classes in property and casualty, homeowners, auto. That could very easily have been some sales rep came in to your company and told you about their latest policies that you could sell, and you took some notes. That's it. That's a formal class. Who says what qualifies as training? You do. You create your resume. You really need to be able to promote yourself. You really need to understand that any training you got could be promoted as something that's formal, that's comprehensive, that's thorough, and that's valuable. And bosses love people who have a lot of formal training. Let's take a look at some other aspects. What this does is this really tells your story. If you read this from top to bottom, it tells a complete story. And we've covered this in the previous training video, how important stories are, because people remember stories. You're a highly experienced sales professional. You're a detail-oriented people person. You expanded business while training and managing staff. You have 5+ years experience in selling insurance and developing clients. And you have extensive formal training. This tells you everything you need to know. Just reading those bold headings are enough to probably get you an interview. Now, you may think at this point that this is very, very hard to put together. Oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? In reality, this is super simple. Let's take a look at this. What we have here under personality traits, detail-oriented people person. All you list here is very short 2 to 3 word statements. These are your personality traits. When you did your golden tickets, this is just a list of your golden tickets. Just list them here. It's very straightforward and simple. After you list the personality traits from your golden tickets, come and put a heading above it. Pick 2 of them that you think you're particularly good at and say personality traits, colon, and put 2 of them up there. Let's take a look at the accomplishments. These are very simple also. You've already done these. These are activities where you gained experience. And in this case, what you're going to do is you're going to quantify them, meaning you're going to put a bunch of numbers in them. You're going to put numbers. You're going to put percent signs. You're going to put dollar signs. You're going to estimate things. For example, let's take a look at the first line. You trained 14, the number 14 in brackets, staff members and exceeded expectations. Received in brackets 2 award certificates. Do you see how when you skim down this resume, your eyes hit that number 14 in the brackets in the parents? It hits the number 2 also in the parents. On the next line, qualified for 6 quarterly sales bonuses by exceeding sales targets by an average of 9%. There must be something you can do that you can quantify. Did you ever help a new employee come up to speed? Well, what if you did, and then you could estimate that if you hadn't helped them, it would have taken that person 10 business days to complete an assignment. But because you helped them, they completed it in 9. Well, you saved a day. That's a 10% productivity improvement. So you took personal initiative to train a new employee, increasing productivity 10%. You could quantify anything. You can put a number on anything. Now, this resume tends to be oriented towards a salesperson. So it's maybe a little bit easier, but you talk in terms of commissions, etc. But did you ever get a raise? You could put that in there. You could say, because my performance exceeded expectations, I was given a 4% bonus. You can call it a bonus rather than a raise. Bonuses tend to carry a little bit more weight than a raise. So what you need to do here is you need to put what we call proof statements. So you're putting a bold heading, expanded business while training and managing staff. And then you're proving it by putting in several bullet points that have numbers in them that prove the point that you're making. Now let's take a look at the next bold statement. 5+ years experience in selling insurance and developing clients. This is the section where you basically list where you worked, because most resumes need a section where you list where you worked. But rather than just saying work experience, I mean, I hate the word work experience because, first of all, it limits you to experience that you got only through work. And secondly, it's pretty obvious that it's work experience if you list a bunch of companies in there. So use the word experience and then make a bold statement. Summarize it so that it really sounds good. What is that you can say about yourself? In this case, 5+ years experience in selling insurance and developing clients. Then you list the few of the companies you worked for, and there's really no need to list them all. You could always say in the previous, let's say there's another 10 years of experience, you could say worked for several other companies over between the period of whatever, pick a year to another year, and in those capacities managed, supervised, and oversaw various operations. Basically, once you go back multiple years, people really don't care where you worked 5, 6, 7, or 8 years ago. A challenge here also is if you have a gap in your work experience, don't feel that there's a need to put in the months. You could just say 2008 to 2009. In this case, what you have here is somebody who left one job in December 2009 and started the next job in January 2010. But what if there's a 9-month gap in there? Just put it in 2008 and 2009. You worked with as an office manager. 2010, you're an insurance agent. Don't let it be obvious that there's a big gap in your employment there. So what this section is for, think of your listing of previous employers as proof that you're an experienced person, and make sure that you put a nice headline under experience so that it makes it sound like that experience is valuable to your new boss and it answers his question, what's in it for me? Now let's take a look again at this GEICO headline. Again, what we saw here is GEICO made a bold claim and then they supported it with proof statements. That's exactly what you're doing on the resume. You're making clear, obvious benefits, and then you're following with proof points. So again, what we see here is, starting from the top, you are a highly successful sales professional, and then you have a sentence or two to prove it. You're a detail-oriented people person. You really don't have any proof there, but the rest of your resume proves that. The personality traits, because they're inherent to the human being, tend not to be proven. Your activities where you've gained experience, which are your accomplishments, you can make a bold statement, and then you have your proof points. You see how this all goes? And you could pull the vast majority of this, almost all of it, comes right off of your golden tickets. Now, at the bottom here, this also is the last one of your golden tickets. P-A-N-L, this is learned knowledge. Extensive formal training. And again, I think we've covered this in terms of the training. Put any kind of training you've done besides your university, and if they could show that you've continually gotten training on something, that looks like a proof point to support the more important statement that you have a lot of training. So it's almost somewhat less important what you got trained in than to support a bold statement that you've been extensively trained. The last thing you do when you finish your resume is you come up with a headline. Because a lot of times you have to read the whole resume, you have to see what story you're telling, and then you can come up with a headline. I suggest you do that last because then what the headline is doing, it's a summary. It's summarizing everything that's below it. So to some extent, everything below the headline is a proof that the headline is true. Let's talk about mistakes. Here are some things you just should not do on your resume. For one thing, don't spell stuff wrong. And I have seen resumes that have typos in them. Let me give you a word of advice. You cannot proofread your own resume. It's virtually impossible because you typed it, you've read it so many times that you can't see the mistakes you've made. Other people can see them easily because they didn't type it. You've read your resume so many times, you can't see the errors you've made. There's only one way to make sure that your resume isn't full of typos and spelling errors. Ask at least 2 to 3 other people to review your resume for spelling errors, so they go through it very, very slowly and carefully. And don't rely on Microsoft Word spell checker, because there could be all kinds of errors, there versus there. There's all kinds of here versus here, H-E-A-R, H-E-R-E. It's not going to catch those as spelling mistakes. Wrong capitalization. Make sure if you capitalize things and it should be, T period, M period, make sure the periods are there versus TM, or just make sure that the capitalization is all correct. Bullet points. This is a minor point, but employers look for this. They're looking for someone who's sloppy versus someone who's detail-oriented. If you use bullets, either end each sentence with a period or don't. Just be consistent. For example, I am detail-oriented with a period versus I'm detail-oriented without a period. My recommendation is don't use periods. They look a little strange when you only have a 1 or 2 word bullet point. Here's a bit of advice that you should memorize or keep this, write this down, because in almost every resume I've ever seen, the word years shows up in there somewhere. And a lot of people don't know if it's Y-E-A-R apostrophe S or Y-E-A-R-S apostrophe. Like, where does the apostrophe go? Here's the lesson. If it's 1 year or less, the apostrophe is preceding the S. If it's 2 years or more, the apostrophe is after the S. For example, I have 1 year of experience equals I have 1 year's apostrophe S experience. I have 2 or more years of experience. Then you would write I have 2 or more years S apostrophe experience. This is important because employers look for these type of errors and they feel this is not an accurate, careful, detail-oriented person. Grammar or spelling mistakes guarantee a rejection. I just can't imagine ever inviting someone in for a job interview if their resume is full of errors. Let's go on to something that's really the icing on the cake, that potentially could give you a huge leg up that nobody does, and this is giant kudo if you can pull this off. Let's think about advertising. Print ads are good, in a magazine and a newspaper, but aren't TV ads a lot better? You can advertise yourself on TV. Well, sort of. Create a 1-minute video, and it's dead simple to do this. It is very, very simple. Have a friend record a video for you on their iPhone or their Android device or some camera, any type of video. It's really simple to do. Just get on your best clothes, your interview clothes. No open collared shirts. Put on a tie if you're a man. Look professional. Have a clean background. No trees growing out of your head. A plain white wall works really well. Make sure you speak professionally and clearly. And you may think, my gosh, what do I say? I don't know what to do. It's really, really simple. All you need to do is read your headline and your subheadline from your resume, and it's going to sound great. Let me give you an example here. You need a script for your video. This is what you basically say. What I've done here is I've underlined the few additional words that I've added. The words that are not underlined come right off the headings from the resume. Hi, I'm a highly experienced sales professional. I'm a detail-oriented people person. In my previous positions, I've expanded business while training and managing staff. I have 5+ years experience in selling insurance and developing clients, and I have benefited from extensive formal training. I would very much like the opportunity to interview with you. I can be reached at the following telephone number. That's it. That should probably take you 30 to 45 seconds. At that point, what you do is you just hold up an 8.5-inch by 11-inch sheet of paper that you printed your name and phone number on. Printed it on a printer, not with a pencil or a pen or a crayon. It comes off a computer printer. Just print a piece just print your name and your phone number and hold it up. Most people don't know how to edit a video so they can add that automatically or have it come out as a last slide. You don't even need to go to that level of detail. You then upload it to YouTube. And then you add it on your resume, like it is right here. Now, what I've done here is have a big red box around it. I do not suggest that you put a big red box around it. Not at all. I just put the red box. You can see where I've put this. But right under your name, I've just moved your name, your street, your home phone number, your cell phone, your email address. Move those up to one simple line. And under it, it says, click here to meet me. Watch my 1-minute video. And it's pretty obvious that that's just a YouTube link. People are intrigued by this. People will click on that link just because it's intriguing. No one does this. Because most of these resumes, by the way, will not be on paper. Most of these resumes will be sent via an email message. So since the resumes are basically attachments, the link is active. So all a boss has to do to watch your video is just click on it. And that's true whether it goes out as a Microsoft Word document or whether it goes out as a PDF document. The goal here is you really want to get someone to spend more time looking at your resume and increasing the chances of getting an interview. And this is kind of like a gimmick. It's a trick to get people to say, oh, look at this guy's got a video. Let me look at it. And it's a really short video. And the video just states exactly what's in the resume. Now, here's some tips on how to pull this off. Stand about 3 to 4 feet from the camera. You pretty much want to record yourself about chest high and above that. Smile. Whatever you do, try to look pleasant. Do not read a script. Do not read word for word. If you say, hi, I am John Doe, I am a talented sales professional, that's horrible. Don't do that. Memorize it, or at least just remember the main points. If you don't say it word for word, that's perfectly fine. It's much more important that it's natural than it's word for word, and you do not want it to look like or sound like you're reading it. Now, it's also possible to film this outdoors. Or indoors or outdoors. If you film it indoors, I recommend that you pick a room that absorbs sound, like a bedroom, because bedrooms, beds and curtains, they usually absorb a lot of sounds. Lots of rooms in your house have big windows in them and hard walls, and they sound very hollow. So sometimes a bedroom with a neutral color beige or white wall is best. Pick a plain wall, make sure it's neutral. Don't pick a wall that has all kinds of pictures hanging on it. Here's another tip. Watch for overhead lights that come from the ceiling that may cast very harsh shadows under your eyes, because it could really make you look kind of like Dracula, and you don't want to look that way. Another option is to film outdoors. You film in the open shade. What the open shade means is that the sun's not hitting you. You do not want to have any direct sun on your face because it casts very harsh shadows and it makes you squint. Carefully choose the background. Make sure that there's no what I call trees growing out of your head, and there's not some weird signage because you're in front of your house and you're picking up some kind of weird construction signs in the background. You don't want a lot of clutter. If you stand in front of some kind of foliage or some kind of shrubbery, that's good. It's nice and neutral. Now here's an example of a resume video which I recorded very simply just in my office against a white wall.
Hi, I'm John Doe. I'm a highly experienced sales professional. I'm a detail-oriented people person. In my previous positions, I've expanded business while training and managing staff. I have 5+ years experience in selling insurance and developing clients, and I've benefited from extensive formal training. I'd very much like the opportunity to interview with you. I can be reached at the following phone number.
Here is a super advanced clever trick using tinyurl.com. I suggest that your resume be a YouTube link. However, YouTube links are kind of hard to type in. If the person isn't able to just click on it, then they have to make sure when they type it in, they get upper and lowercase correctly, because that matters. For example, this is actually the link, this crazy G4 lowercase z underscore lowercase r, capital Y, lower y, this crazy thing, this is actually the link to the video you just saw. What instead if you had the link below? tinyurl.com/John Doe Now. If they have to type it in, it's a whole lot easier to type that in and get it right. And you can create any link you want in this format for free. What you do is you go to the website tinyurl.com. From there, it allows you to create a link in the format tinyurl.com / pretty much anything you want, as long as no one else has registered it before you did. So for some examples, you could say tinyurl.com / great employee / John Smith, assuming that's your name, / hire me now. Simply take your YouTube link and convert it with a tinyurl link. It's actually much easier to type in these simple links than to try to type in these kind of difficult YouTube links which have upper and lower cases and they have underscores and all kinds of crazy things in them. Because if people try to type it in 2 or 3 times and it keeps giving an error each time, they'll just basically give up and get frustrated, and then they'll think you made a mistake. This video is to help you create a tiny URL which will have a much simpler link that people can type in rather than a more long and complicated YouTube link. So first what you do is you go to your YouTube video. Here's my YouTube video here. You can play it. And what you'll find is the link to this video is right below it. If you scroll down a little, you see this little word share. Click on that, and here is the link to that YouTube video. If it's not highlighted, just double click on it. Now right click on it and copy that link. We are now going to go to a website called tinyurl, tinyurl.com. Now what we do here is we paste in here the simple tiny URL that we had by right-clicking, saying paste, and you'll see that you have your YouTube URL here. Now down here we're going to make something that is nice and short and something that people can easily type in and remember. It could be great hire, or it could be your name. Now many of these are already taken, and if it's taken you have to come up with something else. So John Doe happens to be taken, but I'm going to try John-Doe-Now. We'll see if John Doe-Now is taken or not. We'll just click on the button, make tiny URL. And it's asked me to allow access. I say yes. And yeah, it created it right here. So what we're going to find now is if we type that in, it's going to bring us to our YouTube video. So you type this in, you grab this here, and you right click it, and you say copy. And if we go to a blank window and we say paste, and you'll see it says tinyurl.com / John Doe Now, and we say enter, click on the forward button there. What it does is it brings us to our YouTube video. So what you can see here is that anytime you type in tinyurl.com / John-Doe-Now, it'll convert it to the YouTube fairly complicated and long link that's tough to type in. Once you have your resume, you can actually type in either the YouTube link at the top, or if you'd like, you could type in the tinyurl link, which is a shortened link and is much easier to type in.